And welcome back to another edition of the OHIO podcast. I'm your host, Buckeye Boggs. That man over there, that's the wild man, Chris Wilds. And this is our Penn State preview, Chris. It is a big game week here at the OHIO podcast as Ohio State travels to Penn State, my man. Let's just jump right into it. Let's not waste any time because we got a lot to talk about it. So you're up first.
All right, well, Ohio State fans, I think this is something we should actually be a little bit thankful for. That is the fact that this game is going to be a big noon kickoff. It is a 12 o'clock game on Fox this Saturday. Eric, you and I have both gone on record as saying not a big fan of the big noon kickoffs. The crowds tend to be just a little bit sleepy. The teams usually start out just a little bit sluggish. But you know what? As an Ohio State fan, you've almost got to relished the advantage of big noon kickoff, or maybe more so the disadvantage for Penn State more than an advantage for Ohio State. That means they're going to, like you've said before, uh, State College. That's a sleepy town. University Park is a sleepy place to be at noon on a Saturday, much like Columbus, Ohio is. So obviously, we're not going to get the same Penn State team we normally get when we go there for a whiteout game at 7 o'clock at night.
At least not the advantage of the crowd. At least they would not have the advantage of the crowd. The whiteout crowd is
It's wild.
something that people talk about, players talk about as being something that is the toughest place to play. Urban Meyer said it a couple weeks ago on Big Noon
Mhm.
Kickoff that it is the toughest place he's ever tried to coach in. And that includes a comparison to all the other SEC schools that he coached in when he was the head coach at Florida. So pat on the back to Penn State fans. But yeah, Penn State Beaver Stadium, a lot like the shoe, 12 o'clock kick, not the same environment, man. It's just not.
No.
And so yeah, thankful for that. But if you judge on how we have been getting off the slow starts on noon games, maybe it's not an advantage for us. So um, I guess it's just how you look at it. But either way, this game will be a 12 o'clock kick again, so two in a row.
Yeah.
Taking a look at the last 10 games against Penn State, well, Ohio State's pretty much dominated them. They're on a 7 game win streak there. Let's go ahead and look at the 2018 game, 27-26 in State College. That was following 2 years before that when the Nittany Lions got us 24-21. A little bit of not as quite of a close game in 2020, COVID year. No fans in the stands. Ohio State won that one 38-25. And then the last time we were there, it was a 13-point win, 44-31. All these games have been typically a little bit high scoring. Nothing too crazy, but usually in the 20s. That seems to be the formula, 20s to 30s for these two teams. So we'll be keeping our eye on that as well. When we look at this by the numbers, Chris, Ohio State leads the all-time series now 24-14 after trailing early on back when they had played when Penn State was not in the conference. But since Penn State's joined the conference, Ohio State is pretty much taking control of this after the 90s into the 2000s. Of course, Penn State had, the end of the Joe Paul era, which was a little lackluster, and then the transition when they were under penalties from the Big Ten Conference for Jerry Sandusky. And they went through quite a few years, Chris, where they were trying to just keep their head above water and treading water until they were able to get past those sanctions. And so Ohio State's built a nice little nest egg here of a 10-point lead. But then keep in mind, we're 9-1 in the last 10. So this was a pretty even series up until about the last decade or so.
Hmm.
Again, like I mentioned, we're on a 7 game winning streak, which happens to be the longest in this series from 2017 to current. Penn State's longest win streak against the Buckeyes is 4, which, like I mentioned before they were in the conference, 1912 to 1964. Interesting of note, Woody Hayes never beat Penn State in the several times he tried to do so. So, advantage Joe Paterno over Woody Hayes. The last loss to Penn State came in 2016. Like I said, 21-24. Last meeting in State College was 2 years ago in 2022. We won 44-31. Also, largest margin of victory came in 2013. That was a 63-14 beatdown. And then By the way, same score for them, largest margin of victory, except we weren't under sanctions when that happened. That was in 1994. That was one of, if not the worst loss that John Cooper suffered as head coach at Ohio State. Ryan Day's record against, it says Michigan State, my bad. That should say Penn State. Ryan Day's record against Penn State is 5-0. So I will get that corrected before we make that, we send that out on the old social media. But 5-0 against the Nittany Lions is Ryan Day. James Franklin's record against Ohio State, 1-9, Chris. Not looking good there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the tail of the tape?
Well, I'll tell you what, the tail of the tape I think is a little bit deceiving this year, Eric. Ohio State, you look 41.2 points per game offensively, 185.5 rushing yards per game, 296.3 passing yards per game. That's a total of 481.8 total yards per game. They're about 40.9% efficiency in the red zone, and they are still 22 of 22 uh, in the red.
Yeah,
I'm
we
sorry,
had
third
one.
down. They
Yeah,
were
no,
40.9, 22 of 22 in the red zone.
yeah, we had only one red zone trip last week and ended up being a touchdown from Will Howard to Judkins, if I recall correctly.
Yes, yes. Now you look at the Penn State offense. I would say quietly efficient. They are averaging 33.3 points per game, 197 yards on the ground. That's advantage Penn State right there. You look at this team; they're passing for 266.6, having about 463.7 yards per game of total offense. They are 50% on third down conversions. That 10% could be big this Saturday, Eric. And then we do not have red zone efficiency for Penn State. But as you look offensively, I think a lot of things are really injuries are going to really be a big question mark to hang over both offenses this week as we continue to look for the answer at left tackle at Ohio State. How's that line going to perform? And for Penn State, it's a question of will Drew Aller be out there? Um, so, I mean, it could come down this game to, I think, the defenses.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris. They're very how's the word I want to use? Similar in statistics. Very even, I think, is how I would describe these teams. They're very even on both sides of the ball, really,
Yes.
which has been kind of the case the last, I don't know, 5 6 years. It seems like both Penn State and Ohio State are come into this game even statistically. Does Ohio State own a psychological advantage in your opinion, having won as many as they have against James Franklin?
Um, Typically, I would say yes. I know you love this phrase, but Ohio State lives in Franklin's head rent free. But if you look at this year, I don't know it's as much of an advantage because I think Ryan Day is battling his own demons mentally, not just as far as Penn State goes, but just as far as the performance of his team is going, the expectations. Ryan Day, even though Franklin is 1-9 and walking into this game undefeated, I almost feel like Ryan Day is the one who's under the pressure.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and if you look at this, I mean, we talked about the fact it could come down to defenses. And if you have the slide there, Eric, you talked about these defenses being very, very
Yeah,
similar.
let me pull it up for you.
I mean, Ohio State only giving up 12.7 points per game. Penn State's just giving up just over 2 touchdowns a game. Uh, Rushing yards, both are right around that 90 yards per game. Penn State a little over, Ohio State a little under. Uh, Passing yards, almost dead even. Less than 3 yards difference per game in what they're giving up. I mean, third down efficiency. You've got Ohio State at 30, giving up 30%. Penn State giving up 32.5%. Red zones. Ohio State is 10 of 14 in the red zone defensively. We don't again have the number on Penn State, but Eric, these are two very, very capable defenses. And with the injuries that both teams have sustained to the offenses, we typically like to have, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I usually like to give big scores. I would not be surprised if the team that makes it to 28 doesn't win this game.
If I think there's only one thing that keeps me from saying that, and that is the fact that Will Howard, I think, has the potential
To go off.
to go off, but and depending on what Penn State does offensively, it could end up being a shootout. But I would think that percentage is lower. Um,
I think if Aller
however,
doesn't play, it's a very low scoring game.
do
If
you
Aller
though?
doesn't,
Because the other quarterback is pretty athletic that they were playing,
he's
and there was.
athletic, he's efficient, but if you look, he completed. I'm trying to get I don't remember the numbers, but wasn't he like 12 of 14 or something like that? But only went for like 76 yards. So his passing game is a short passing game.
Hmm.
It's almost an extension of the running game.
Now I remember a few years ago we knocked their quarterback out, or he wasn't playing very well, and they brought in the backup, and they just ran
Yeah,
it up the middle on us,
yeah,
and
that
we
was
couldn't stop it.
we knocked Clifford out, wasn't it? And they
Yeah,
brought in the
Sean. Yeah.
backup. But and you know what, Eric, that's a very serious concern here, specifically when you say running up the middle, because if you look this year, when Ohio State's been beaten by the quarterbacks, it is up the middle. It's the linebackers being out of position um, that's got us in trouble.
Yeah. You're exactly. So it's incredibly interesting. Now, I said, do we have an advantage psychologically? And then you went straight to my follow up question, and you said maybe they have the advantage psychologically because Ryan Day might be feeling a little bit of the stress in this game. Um, if last week was a crossroads, he absolutely couldn't lose that game. It almost feels like it's a repeat of
It
the
is.
Nebraska game, but on the road. You're playing a much better opponent who's ranked third. You're ranked fourth in the AP. Not that those rankings matter. Um, Ohio State, I believe, is a 2.5 point favorite last I looked in this game, even despite being on the road. Um, obviously, I would think that people looking at the game against Nebraska a week ago and say that's more of an anomaly. Ohio State is probably better than what they played. We're gonna find out. There's a lot of things going on with this program behind the scenes. Press conferences again today as we record this on Tuesday evening. Not impressed. No one is impressed with the press conferences.
No.
Almost looks like the coaching staff is didn't want to be there. And the
This is the
reason
whole staff feeling the pressure, Eric. This isn't just Day. The whole
hmm
staff is feeling this pressure, I believe.
yeah. So very interesting what's going on inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I said it Sunday evening. I'm going to repeat it today. This could be a moment that this team circles the wagons, finds some kind of spark in Happy Valley, galvanizes the team to get them back to where they were playing earlier in the season.
I, I hope it
But,
is.
but next to the trip to Eugene, Oregon, that was a 32-31 loss. This is the next biggest game on this schedule, hands down. I one could argue Indiana is another big one. They are undefeated.
Mhm.
One could also argue the last game of the season at home against the team up north. But if you just are taking national perspective rankings, this is the next big one on the roster. Um, you've mentioned it. Ryan Day is 2-8 against top five opponents.
Mhm.
It's not a good winning percentage, 25%. James Franklin's got this team at number 3.
Mhm.
This is a huge football game. And if James Franklin is ever going to get past the 10-2 Franklin moniker that he's earned in Happy Valley, It feels like this is it.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting game, Eric, because depending on how things shake out, if Ohio State were to suffer a loss here, it doesn't necessarily mean the playoff is out. It means that most of your goals are off the table, but it does not mean the playoff is out because a 10-2 Ohio State, should they run the table after that, still does make the playoff when their only two losses, I believe, are to number one and number three.
Yeah, and more than likely, Oregon and Penn State are going to both be in the Big Ten championship game. And if there's going to be three teams from the Big Ten who goes,
Ohio
it's going to
State is the
be
third
Ohio
one,
State because that would mean Ohio State also beats Indiana.
barring a trip. As I say, barring a trip up to Indiana. But
We
here's the
get that in
thing.
the shoe though.
Here's the thing, and you mentioned it about the fact that this is the next biggest game after Oregon. I really feel like as you look at Ohio State's schedule as the year goes out, every game is the next biggest game.
It is.
Because for Ryan Day, and I'm sure that you've read the comments, you've heard whispers, I'm sure, coming out of Columbus as well. I said at the beginning of the year, and I think more and more, Ryan Day is playing for his or coaching for his job right now. I firmly believe that. Um, and I've said, for all my criticism of Ryan Day, I hope nothing more than he's able to come on and just go out there and shut me up. Nothing would make me happier than to have to come on here next Sunday and again, at the end of the season after a Big Ten championship game, and even a third time after a national championship game, and make me shut my mouth and apologize for everything I've said. But Eric, I just worry that it's not going to happen. I'm very concerned.
Well, I tell you what, Chris. Let's go ahead and bring on the Nittany Blues guys from our sister podcast in the College Huddle. Let's find out what their take is. Find out a little bit more about their team, and then when we come back, we'll be giving you guys our predictions. So hang
Whenever
tight,
you're ready.
everybody. All right, we are back with Vince from the Nittany Blues podcast. Vince, welcome to the OHIO podcast as we preview the big one this week between your Penn State Nittany Lions and the OHIO or Ohio State Buckeyes, man.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
It's going great. It's a big week for both of us, both our teams. Penn State comes to this football game undefeated,
Mm-hmm.
ranked third in the nation. Ohio State, of course, got one loss, that being a 1 point defeat to the number one team in the nation right now in Oregon. And here we are back on the road again against another top five opponent. And the storyline still exists. Can Ryan Day beat a top five opponent? And can James Franklin get over the Ohio State hump? I mean, something's gonna happen this week. So one of these guys is gonna come into that post game press conference feeling pretty good about things. So what are some of the main storylines happening over there in Penn State this week?
Yeah, a lot of storylines. The big storyline here is injuries, of course. Those who watched the Wisconsin Penn State game know that quarterback Drew Aller went down um, right around halftime, and he came back with a brace on his knee. He tried to go, and he went to his coach and said, I'm not good to go. Put Bo in. So that was kind of the trust they had within each other to communicate, and they ended up going with Bo. And a lot of Penn State fans are very nervous because they did come out of that game trailing. And then Bo did a great job, did a really nice job running the football. He's very elusive, very quick. There was a play where really we missed our block, and he beat three guys, to the corner. Got a nice 12-yard gain to get a first down. So his ability to run is very good, but there is concern among myself, at least in the Penn State fan base, that he can elude the speed of Ohio State's defense. So that's going to be a big storyline, the quarterback situation. And
So
really,
is Bo going or is it kind of still up in the air?
It's definitely still up in the air.
Okay.
Franklin said in his presser that, but it's going to be a game time decision, and
Mm,
that really makes preparing for the Buckeyes really difficult. He did say that both Drew and Bo are going to be getting practice reps, and then he also mentioned that, hey, if Drew can't go and we end up starting Bo, he's like, we got to prepare Ethan Kruckemeyer in case he has to go in. And then he was also saying that, hey, if we're giving 3 guys reps in practice, we're almost getting nobody ready because they're not getting enough practice reps. So that's
right.
the biggest story heading into the game, who the quarterback's going to be, and the health of Drew Aller. And I've actually talked with several members in the community within the Penn State fan base, and some people think Bo is better in the Andy Kotelnicki offense, just his mobility, and Kotelnicki really likes mobile quarterbacks, just like with Jalen Daniels at Kansas in his time there. But at the same time, Drew's arm strength and decision making has been really beneficial for Penn State. He takes really good care of the football. He did have the 3 turnovers in the USC game, but made some big plays, and they end up winning that one in a thrilling overtime finish. So he can really stretch the field. It is very evident that Bo has nowhere close to the arm strength of Drew Aller. When you're guarding Drew, you got to be prepared to cover 50, 60 yards of the field. But with Bo, you're probably more concerned about those 30-yard throws. So that really allows the defense to then play more aggressively, not only in terms of yards down the field, but playing up even a little more aggressively on the sidelines with those sideline throws. So it's going to be Ohio State's preparing for both. That can be a challenge, but at the same time, Penn State's quarterbacks are getting less reps in practice. So that's the number one storyline. Probably 2 on our list of injuries is Deny Dennis Sutton. He's been a stud at defensive end this year, and even Chip Kelly was saying, "Hey, these are the best two best defensive ends we're playing with Abdul Carter and Deny." When Deny did go down, he tried to come back in the second half. He had a groin injury and went 1 snap, and then it was very evident he just wasn't going to be able to continue, and the pain threshold was just too high. So we had guys like Amin Vanover step up, and Smith Vilbert, and the defensive line just put on a clinic in the second half. They literally drew a line in the sand and said, hey, our starting quarterback's out. We are acting like, our offense is not going to score the rest of the game. So they had a pick 6 for a touchdown. They went up 14-10, and they pretty much drew that line in the sand and said, hey, Wisconsin is not getting 14 points, and we're not going down like this. And they end up winning 28-13. So the defensive line, that is definitely the big strength of the Penn State defense. Linebackers, guys to look out for are Tony Rojas and Kobe King. They're both playing very well. And then the secondary, KJ Winston, I'm not expecting him to be back. He had a long-term injury earlier in the season. So I would not expect him to be back. And you're going to be looking at Zakee Wheatley and Jalen Reed at the safety position. Jalen Reed's playing out of his mind right now. He was the guy who had the pick 6. So defense is looking pretty good, especially in the second half. But from our perspective with the defense, it really depends on what team shows up. They early on in the Wisconsin game gave up a lot of 3rd and longs, had a lot of silly penalties on special teams. Like the Wisconsin guy, tried to punt. We had a guy there, and then to block it, to force the punter to run, and the punter just ran 15 yards down the field. And then we had some penalties in the red zone that led to a Wisconsin touchdown. And it was just undisciplined football, 12 guys on the field, stuff like that. But then in the second half, they got things really cleaned up. And it was just, I was looking at the first half, I'm like, if this is the team we put out against Ohio State, we are getting slaughtered. But if we put it up against our team in the second half, this is a team that can really contend with the Buckeyes. So those are 2. And then just like you guys have some tackle injuries, we had a tackle injury as well with Anthony Donka, and Nolan Rucci, former Wisconsin Badger, stepped in at right tackle, didn't miss a beat, played great. So the offensive line is definitely a place where Penn State does have a lot of depth heading into the contest. So I would say the big obstacle is going to be, health of the team, especially at that quarterback position.
Yeah, I definitely have we have our eye on that as Ohio State fans, no doubt. I would not. I'm not against the idea that Drew Aller is actually who we want to face, and I'll tell you why. Ohio
Mm-hmm.
State continually struggles against running quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It is a issue. And to hear you say Bo might be better fit for this offense kind of scares me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. And of course, you don't have much film on him either, right? So you don't
Yeah.
know his tendencies. It's kind of a mystery. Um, yeah. So to hear you say that kind of gives me like maybe a 75% Drew Aller who tries to go on this one might be better for us. Um, anyways, that being said, Penn State has gotten to this point of the season. Um, Kind of impressively. They've been in some close games, games that in the past James Franklin has found a way to fumble away,
Yep.
and they're winning them this year. What is accredited to that? Is it the players? Is it the coaches around him are more confident in what they're doing, more experienced? Like what's the maybe a couple things or one thing that you can put your thumb on that says this is what makes this year's team different than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a player and I'm going to give you a coach.
Okay.
One has to be Andy Kotelnicki. The play calls he's putting out there are so creative. This team compared to last year, they're going to give you a lot of eye candy and try to catch your eyes, in different places just to give you that half a second of hesitation. I think like the key play for that in the USC game that really sparked them in the second half offensively. You had like Tyler Warren shifting over to center and then snapping to Bo, who threw it to Drew, who hits, Tyler down the field. And Tyler Warren does everything. I think Tyler Warren should be in that top 3 conversation for Heisman. Like, I think he's a little probably not going to make it just because of the position he plays. But Tyler Warren has completed passes. He has had snaps at center, uh, tight end. He's been mossing people. He's had rushing touchdowns. Sometimes you'll see him in like the wildcat position or even under center. They did a nice little trick play where Drew was acting like he couldn't hear the play on the sideline, and we just snuck Tyler Warren under center and did like a QB sneak for 3 or 4 yards. So Tyler Warren is going to be a nightmare. You need to know where 44 is at all times, or he's going to hurt you guys in Beaver Stadium on Saturday. So Tyler Warren and Andy are doing a great job, and I think that's the biggest difference in this team this year.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the offense first, and then I'm going to go over to your defense, which I really like.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, how do you think you're going? What do you foresee Penn State doing offensively to attack Ohio State on the defensive side?
Yeah, so offensively to attack that defense, it's going to be really difficult. Even if you look back at last year, the offense just really struggled. I'm looking at the offensive line to hopefully have a good day. That's definitely a good position group for us. And having Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, both stud running backs. I think they can give because how do you say his name?
Quinshawn Judkins.
Judkins, yes, Judkins and Travion Henderson. I think they can give them a run for best duo of running backs in the country, Big Ten, let alone the country. So I'm hoping those guys can have a big day. Tyler Warren, get your stars involved. Like, Ohio State's not going to have easy throws. Like it's that cut and dry. And if you need a guy that, like, if you see Tyler Warren in single coverage, like you're going to Tyler Warren. You try to get your best players the ball. And an area where we have been struggling is, the wide receivers. The wide receivers just aren't at the same level as our tight ends and our running backs and the offensive line. They've struggled at times this year. They did some nice things against Wisconsin, but we are looking for them to step up to make the offense a little more balanced.
What about defensively? Now, I I've the games I've watched, I've been very impressed with you guys defensively, and that shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, Penn State defensively has been pretty good in the past as well. Got a new defensive coordinator though, former Indiana coach is
Mhm.
now calling the plays there defensively. Um, and Ohio State's been a little Jekyll and Hyde offensively this year. Um, you go into Eugene, Oregon, you score 31 points, which was good enough to win the football game, in all honesty, offensively.
Mhm.
And then your defense lets you down. Then you come right back after a bye week last week against Nebraska, and defensively you did great. You held them to 17 points, but you only mustered 21 points against a team that Indiana scored 56 on the week before. So it's a little, which I know is an anomaly, but it's a little Jekyll and Hyde offensively for Ohio State this year. Um, what are some things that you foresee Penn State doing that's going to give Will Howard in this offense some trouble?
Yeah, so the way this team has played typically is they've been just trying to limit explosive plays. They did let Illinois dip and dunk down the field pretty early on our opening drive. Illinois did score a touchdown, and then Illinois got a good amount of yards in the game, but Penn State was always able to get a stop at some point, later down the field. So I think that's something they'll be trying to do. Um, Obviously, Chip Kelly has been wanting to run the football and make sure that's a part of the offense. I do think that Penn State is going to struggle a bit with the wide receivers of Ohio State. Ohio State's wide receivers are among the best in the Big Ten. I do think that USC was a good test because they have a lot of speed at wide receiver as well. So I think that was you know good in preparation for this game. So I think it's gonna be tough. I think edge rushers have to get there. We need Abdul Carter and whoever is lined up next to him, whether it's a Denied and a Sutton or a Amin Vanover. We need to get to the quarterback and win those battles on the edges and try to make Ohio State one dimensional.
Abdul Carter scares me to death.
He's a scary guy. Like I watched him in the blue white game in April, and our tight end had an assignment to block him. He didn't get a finger on him. That's how fast he is.
Yeah, he's and with the left tackle issues we've got right now, Jimmy Simmons was doing great. He had an All American season until he got hurt against Oregon, and he's done for the year. And the replacement that was brought in last week was not ready and got just sent to school, and then got hurt himself.
Mhm.
So near the end of the game, left tackle is going to be a major concern for Ohio State, and when you have a huge weakness like that, and then Abdul Carter's who you're going up against, that is a problem for Ohio State. So uh, that's where my eyes are going to be going to early on in this game is to see what Ohio State does to try to slow him down. My anticipation is that they're going to chip on him. Tight
Mhm.
ends, running back, in passing when we're passing, try to keep him out of the backfield as long as possible. And then the running game for Ohio State is also interesting because they took a dip last week in their numbers a lot actually.
Yeah.
And again, I think it was because we just didn't have the personnel at left tackle to run some of the same schemes we were running beforehand. And that affected what we saw. So big part of this football game, can Ohio State score enough points? That's literally and to think that that's where we're at this year when Ohio State was scoring as many points as they wanted, the problem was they couldn't stop anybody. So it's a little bit of a different scenario coming into this football game, but it's going to be interesting nonetheless. Um, Big noon kickoff. Obviously, and here's the thing, Vince. Ohio State fans feel the same way. We really do. We have been preaching for ever since Fox decided to make big noon kickoff a thing. Penn State, Ohio State is a night game, last day in October. It's the Halloween game, baby. That's
Mhm.
what it is. It should be the last Saturday in October, a night game every other year. It is a rivalry. I don't care what the Big Ten tried to tell everybody back when was doing the whole realignment thing about what is a rivalry and what is not in this conference.
Hmm.
Everybody knows the last game of the year, of course, it's going to be the maize and blue and the scarlet and gray. But since the mid 90s, this has been a rivalry for both these teams. And to ignore that and then to say, we're just going to throw this on Big Noon now is, I think, is really a disservice to the fan base. Um, the Ohio State players talk about the the hardest place to play is Beaver Stadium at night. Urban Meyer talks about it. Everybody
Hmm.
talks about it. What are the Penn State fans talking about, saying when it comes to the Big Noon kick? And does Beaver Stadium have the same issue that the shoe does? It takes us about 2.5 quarters to wake up on a 12 o'clock kick to realize, oh, there's a game going on today.
I would say that as fans, we hate it just because the tailgating is so great. In state college, like if you are going to pick one place to tailgate for an away game, like you got to pick Happy Valley. Just the all like the farmland that's kind of around the stadium. You just have so much space for tailgating compared to other venues, and like they do a really good job handling all the parking. With our little town of State College, we get like 200,000 people in there on those tailgating weekends. So it just takes away from that experience. So I think that's what bothers people the most. And then when you are under the lights in Beaver Stadium, night games are just like different. Like it is so loud. Against Illinois this year, when Franklin said, "Hey, let's bring some whiteout energy," we forced 4 false starts and forced Illinois to burn 4 timeouts. Like that is how loud and disruptive it is. However, with Ohio State, I do think the energy is very similar. 2 years ago, when we played Ohio State at home, it was very loud, and the only thing that was down was the ticket prices, but fans filled it up. We had close to 110,000 fans, screaming their head off, and unfortunately, Ohio State was able to pull away in the fourth quarter, but the energy is still very high, but I would say like it doesn't have the same aura. I would say the volume's very similar, but the aura is very different.
Interesting. Okay. Well, it's something we've as my co-host said, this is advantage Ohio State being a noon kick,
Oh, for sure.
as opposed to being a primetime game under the lights, which again, my feeling is this should be every other year in our stadiums at night.
I agree.
It
And
should be.
it's a shame for everybody.
It
Like
is.
everyone wants to watch the best games at the end of the day. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you look at everyone loves Sunday night football, everyone loves Monday night football in the NFL, and then everyone's like, "Oh, Thursday night kind of sucks," because it's usually ends up never being like two good opponents. And it's disappointing when a primetime game that's nationally televised like happens like this. Like I don't know. And plus, like with all the social media now and everyone's bashing Fox and how they hate it, like you would think as a media company, they wouldn't want that. And you think they
Yeah.
would listen to some of this feedback and try to pick a different time later in the day, like especially at night. And they're taking away all of these great games. And it's like every week. Like it was Penn State at West Virginia this year. Ohio State, Penn State, playing Michigan. Even you guys, Ohio. I'm sure Ohio State, Michigan's going to be a big noon kickoff. Like that's a
Oh
great
yeah,
game. That
guaranteed.
should
Mm-hmm.
that should be at night. Like why? I don't understand why Penn State, Wisconsin is a night game. Like it just or like even like Illinois with us. Like they were good this year, but no one was expecting it, so they just kind of threw it
Yeah.
into the night game, and it's just like it ruins that experience for everyone. Like the like night games at Beaver Stadium are so different, and like they just produce so many amazing like games. Like I was there for the Block 6, Franklin's only victory over the Buckeyes, and the energy in that stadium was just like you can like literally feel the electricity. It is
Mm-hmm.
it is actually crazy. It's something special that I don't think you can get anywhere else.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what the way you think this game's going to go. So, if you had to write the script for Penn State, Give me your script. Tell me how you think the game's going to go, and when you're done, give me your score prediction.
Ooh, score prediction. I've definitely gone back and forth a little bit heading into this one, but I do think just the whole quarterback conversation is going to be difficult. I'm definitely having some flashbacks to when Sean Clifford got hurt at Illinois a few years ago, and then we brought him back before he was ready against Illinois. We ended up losing that game in 9 overtimes, and then lose the game a week later to Ohio State. And it was, I think this is going to be a close game. Penn State, like, I don't think they're going to come out super slow like they did against Wisconsin and USC. That's been a trend for them. I think they're going to be locked in and ready. But the question is, can they hold it and hang on to the talent of Ohio State? It's going to be a 4-quarter battle, I think. But at the end of the day, like if I do have to guess, like if my life depends on it and I had to make a prediction based off of what I think will happen, I think it'll be probably around Ohio State, I would say 28, and maybe Penn State 24.
Okay.
I think it's going to be, I think just their wide receivers are so good. I think it's going to be really difficult to stop. And I think if we can get to the quarterback fast enough on the pass rush, that is going to be key. Like you guys are in for a rough day if our defensive line is on. If you have denied Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter, and Zane Durant causing disruption in the middle, if we can get pressure with 4 guys there and get Ohio State to be one-dimensional, stop that run game, and then do enough to get to the quarterback and maybe create a couple turnovers, I think that's what it would take. Special teams has to be better. They really struggled on special teams and the kick return and the punt return. So I think that's an area they need to get better too. And offensively, Ohio State always has great defensive backs, and we need to get more production out of our wide receivers. So I think it's going to be a tough one. I think the whole quarterback thing is going to make it really difficult. And, going into practice, and do we play Drew? And if we do play Drew, is his mobility going to be limited? Because Drew Aller is a very mobile quarterback. People don't give him enough credit. He's no Bo Perola, but he is very mobile. So it's one of those things kind of based off the quarterback. I think I'm going to, if my life depended on it, I think I got to go Ohio State on this one. We just are always so close and just never seem to get over that hump.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting football game to say the least, and I'm looking forward to it. And it's kind of sad to me that based off of the growth of the Big Ten, it's not going to be every year anymore. So kind of bummed about that, man. But
it is a weird feeling. Like this is like the big game we have circled on our calendar every single year, because like with Michigan, we would typically split with Michigan. We would go to their place, get killed, and then when they would come here, we'd typically beat them outside of the past 3 years when they've been really good.
Mm-hmm.
But Ohio State was always the one. It's the team Penn State fans hate the most, and we want to get them every single year, and like always fall short. And it's funny because I was talking with some friends, and they're saying like, oh, if like we win, like, and people storm the field, I'm going to storm the field. And I was like, we're ranked number 3 and they're ranked number 4. I was like, technically not an upset, and that's when you do that.
So if you guys were to storm the field and tear down the goalpost, where would you take them?
It's funny. So some people
up
saying,
on Nittany Mountain. Is that where they would go?
Yeah, some people are saying, hey, let's take it to Mount Nittany. Some people are saying Champs downtown. Some people are saying Spring Creek. I guess in the old days they used to put it in Joe Paterno's like front lawn, like.
There you go.
That's what they do. So
that's fantastic. I would love.
I'll make a pitch. I'll make if I get enough people, I'll ask them to carry it to my backyard. Like I'm only a few miles from Beaver Stadium, so I'll see if I can.
It'll become the official Nittany Blues goalpost in Vince's backyard. I love it.
Yeah,
awesome. Tell everybody where they can find the Nittany Blues, my friend.
Yeah, you can follow us at Nittany Blues Pod. We're on Instagram, Facebook, X. You can follow us there. You can also follow our website on nittnyblues.com, and we have some shopping there as well. So if you'd like some Nittany Blues merchandise and you're a Penn State fan, make sure to check us out. You're not going to find anything better.
And if all that fails, you can't remember that, go over to thecollegehuddle.com, scroll over to the Big Ten, down to Penn State, and there you'll find a link to the Nittany Blues College Huddle page with all of the links that Vince just provided for you right there at your fingertips. Vince, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Enjoy the game Saturday, my friend. The OHIO podcast is brought to you by Mastermind. Mastermind specializes in 360-degree, high-definition mobile video mapping, GIS integration, and traffic safety studies. Mastermind cares about traffic safety and keeping you safe on the roadway. Visit Mastermind at onlinemastermind.com. So do you want to wait until after we talk to them? You just want to act like we just
Doesn't matter.
interviewed them?
Whatever you want to go with.
You tell me.
I mean, I'm fine either way.
Let's just keep rolling and act like it's the end of the show.
Sounds good.
And thank you to the Nittany Blues podcast for joining us and offering us their insights into Penn State. And so, Chris, it's that time of the show. We have to put our names on a prediction. I was thinking earlier today, would this be the first time that I hear Chris predict a loss for Ohio State? I've been sitting here thinking about this all day. Don't give your answer yet. I have a good feeling about this game. I'm nervous about this game, but I'm usually always nervous about Penn State. I feel like something good is going to happen for the Buckeyes here. Now, being an optimist here, I understand that. And I also, maybe it's my refusal to believe that the Ryan Day era is over. Because if he were to lose this game, there is a chance if he loses another one, particularly the one at the end of the regular season, the era is over. He's not coming back. So this feels really critical, and I'm not ready to lay that down yet, especially when I think he and the players and the coaching staff understand what's on the line here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what was going on last week with the running game. Maybe it was because they just weren't comfortable with who was at left tackle. But we got away from what we were doing in the running game, and it really affected the offense. If we can find that spark again offensively, and we can kind of start to score on every other drive here, put up some points, get us some momentum, I feel pretty good about this football game. So that being said, before I give my score, any last takes, any last thoughts before we give our predictions?
I'm very concerned. I am extremely concerned. I do not feel that. I'll just save it for the prediction.
Okay. That being said, I'm going to go with 31-21 Ohio State.
This morning, Eric, when I got in on, of course, you know me. I like to bet a little bit.
Yeah.
I took the points.
Mm.
I do think Ohio State finds a way to win this one, but I've got it at 28-27.
Wow. That is so close. If
And
it's
the only reason
28,
I took it, let me tell you what my methodology was in 28-27. I don't feel comfortable that Ohio State can kick a field goal. I think they get 4 touchdowns. I've got Penn State with 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals. I'm sorry, 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals.
okay. All right. Wow. That would be something to lose by one in Oregon, but then win by one in Happy Valley. That would be something. Well, we want to know what your score predictions are, so go ahead and put those down in the comments section below. Anything that we talked about in this episode that you want to expound upon or give your take, we want to hear from you. Go ahead and put that down in the comments section below as well. If you're a Penn State fan, by all means, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. We love to have you. We love to have you in the chat. We'll chop it up with you, absolutely. But if you're a Penn State fan and you're not listening to the Nittany Blues podcast, you're doing it wrong. You need to go follow them boys over there. Give them a nice follow, a like, and 5-star review, and everything else. And if you're a Buckeye fan, please, please, please go ahead and like this video. Give it a little thumbs up. That appreciates it. We appreciate that. It helps out the channel. And subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. But if you want to be a member, it's only $3.99. And so we promise you it is the best value out there in the Buckeye sphere when it comes to memberships. So, all right, Chris. Well, you have fun this weekend. You are going to be doing the play-by-play and the watch party. So with Corey and Lisa, I think Johnny. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So enjoy that. I'm going to be traveling with my wife to Pittsburgh. We're going to be hanging out. That's the plan at this point on Tuesday night. We'll be hanging out with Wargo, watching the game there. Hopefully you're not being with us at this game doesn't hurt us. We have a nice streak going down there. So
We
uh,
did.
we'll we'll see. So again, everybody, like, share, subscribe. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody. Until next time, you know what to do. Be kind to one another. I owe someone's OH. Sing Carmen, Ohio with all your heart. Chris, OH.
IO.
Go Bucks.